Points on Product call with Dr. Brian Dixon, our VP of Product Development. And it's always been a fun last 4 weeks. We're on our fifth week. And so we're excited about the topic. There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of text messages and different emails that have been sent over on, hey, Fry, what is the next topic? What are the next products are we talking about? And so, Brian, we've gotten a lot of value out of this call, and I can't thank you enough for your insight and your vision, where you're taking this company with regards to the product side of things. And this call is to empower not only the distributors, but the brand new people that might be listening to the science behind our product line for the first time today. So it's kind of a twofold mission for us with regards to this call. And I'm super excited to be talking about the supposedly the second brain in the body, and that's our gut and the gut health that is so important for us, specifically with our products Pro and Prebiotic. And so I'm going to turn the time over to you, my friend, and I can't wait to take a load of notes, and then we'll answer some questions and keep changing the world together.
Yeah, thanks, Fry. I appreciate that. And you're right. We are going to talk about why your gut's considered your second brain. I'd be curious if anybody knows. Throw it in the chat. But maybe we'll throw the punchline out there first. But yeah, today let's talk about really our microbiomes. And when we're talking about the microbiome, we are generally talking about gut health. Now, I think the microbiome has gotten so much attention lately because so much research has come out. In fact, if you go to PubMed right now, you will find over 60,000 articles on just the microbiome. And I think the more that people look into the importance of the microbiome to our overall health, the more that they find. And so this research is literally growing exponentially when it comes to the health benefits of a healthy microbiome. But what is the microbiome, just in case that might be a new word for you? Well, simply put, the microbiome is just this collection of all of these, what you might think is icky, nasty microorganisms that are living all over us and even inside of us. In fact, our microbiome is made up of a number of different things. It's made up of some things called archaea. Bacteria are already pretty primitive, but there's even considered to be more primitive bacteria, and those are called archaea, or single-celled, like almost little animals called protozoa. Even things that we think of as maybe generally being harmful to us and things we'd want to avoid, things like fungi, viruses, and bacteria can actually be healthy when the right ones are living in the right places. Now, what if I only told you that you were only half human? And the reason I say that is because we are made up of about as many cells as the microbiome is made up of, if that makes sense. So we have about 40 trillion different microorganism cells living on and in us. And that is also about how many cells we are made up of. So you're only half human. And again, we might think about these microorganisms living on and in us as being a little bit disgusting. And quite frankly, medicine of 10 and 20 years ago probably has led us astray. And the reason I say that is the mindset 10 to 20 years ago, and maybe even still currently, is to just keep us as sterile as possible. We were throwing antibiotics at just everything. If you had a little sniffle, you got antibiotics. It was just, let's try to keep us as sterile as possible. When in fact, an opposite approach might be best. And when we're thinking about our microbiome, let's think about it more as an ecosystem that we can foster and nourish and encourage to be as healthy as possible to help keep us as healthy as possible. And we see this kind of ecosystem approach throughout nature and these different mutualistic relationships throughout nature. I mean, think about a honeybee and a flower. I mean, if we lost all the pollinators off the face of the earth tomorrow, you would never eat another fruit in your life. I mean, that's how tightly linked pollinators and flowers are. Or think about Nemo living in the sea anemone there, or the coral that's made up of algae and then this hard calcium structure, right? So the calcium structure or the coral is actually providing a home for algae to live in. So the algae gets a safe place to live, and the coral gets food as the algae are photosynthesizing from the sun. So we see these really tight relationships throughout nature, and we say the same thing about our own microbiomes living on and in us. And in fact, the research that has shown that the microbiome, and especially a healthy microbiome, and especially in our guts, can have wide-reaching health implications. I mean, look at all the different roles that the microbiome plays. It plays a role in cardiovascular health, immune health, our oral health, brain health. They help us metabolize a number of different nutrients. So things like fats, they can actually make nutrients for us. So things like some of our B vitamins, vitamin K, lipoic acid, just some examples of nutrients that can be made by the microbiome. They also help us metabolize different foreign substances. So can also be a first line of defense against any foreign compounds that we may have ingested. So just a number of different health roles, but usually when we're talking about the microbiome, we are talking about gut health. And now let's talk about some of the implications that gut health has on our overall body. So if we're talking about the microbiome that's living in our gut, where do we find that microbiome? And it turns out the further down our digestive system we go, the more bacteria that we find. And if you think about it, it's actually a brilliant system, and why we have this true mutualistic benefit between our gut microbiome and our own health. And the reason for that is because so many of those bacteria are found at the very bottom of our digestive system. So these bacteria, if you think about it, they're giving us a first swing at trying to absorb and metabolize all of the nutrients that we want. So some absorption's happening in the stomach, the small intestine, and then basically these bacteria, this microbiome in our gut, are eating the leftovers of things we either didn't absorb or things that we can't digest and absorb. So pretty clever. And then these bacteria take that food that we can't utilize and they use it for their own fuel source. And we'll talk about why that can be so healthy. But right, back to your point about that gut being your second brain, that is very much the case. And it's very much the case, not just for the brain, but for almost literally every other organ inside of our body. But generally speaking, this is known as the gut-brain axis. And the reason for this is that this microbiome that's living inside of our gut is actually making healthy compounds as a result of metabolizing all that food that we can't eat. And those healthy compounds make it into circulation and make it to every organ inside of our bodies, including the brain. So here's what that looks like. So there are direct connections between our brain and our gut. So there are actually nerves that do run from our brain down to our gut. Can sense like when your stomach gets really full. So there's little stretch sensors on your stomach. So that can signal that, oh my gosh, I've eaten too much. But we talked about the microbiome can also metabolize that food that we can't eat. So in the process of doing that, they release a number of different compounds. They can release things like neurotransmitters. So serotonin, for example, can be made in the gut microbiome, get into circulation and make us feel good and happy. The microbiome also makes a number of other small molecules that when they get into circulation, act to trigger a whole bunch of other health mechanisms in different organs inside of our bodies. So here we also have this nutrigenomic angle that can come as a direct result of a healthy microbiome. So it might seem crazy to you that something happening so far away down in our guts can actually be affecting our brain. So here was a study that they did in mice, right? You could never do this in humans because basically making somebody sterile would probably kill them, but we can do this in a laboratory setting. So what these scientists did was they took mice and they split them into two groups and they sterilized both groups of those mice. And then in one of those groups, they put in a healthy microbiome into that mouse and then monitored what was going on in their brains. And so you can see in the brains of these mice that had a healthy microbiome, you can see how lit up the brain is, how active it is. And this specifically, the top image is looking at gene expression. So these small molecules that are made in the gut microbiome are making it into circulation and activating these health promoting genes inside of the brain. How cool is that? So there really is this direct and indirect link between our guts and our brains. Okay, so now let's get in and talk about some of the nitty gritty with the microbiome. I've got some good news and bad news here. The bad news is you do have to memorize a couple of different things, but the good news is there's only 3 things you have to remember, and that is pre, pro, and post, okay? So we talk about quite commonly in the world of microbiome research, we talk about prebiotics, probiotics, and something that's a little bit newer in the field called postbiotics. So let's talk about each of these. So prebiotic, and I still get confused and usually have to run through these in my own mind, but prebiotic, the easiest way to remember it is that this is the food that is meant for your microbiome. Okay, so it's just the food that basically we can't metabolize that these bacteria can. And really what we're talking about and what that food is are complex carbohydrates. So a lot of fibers, right? Maybe you didn't realize fibers are just complex carbohydrates, but then a lot of other complex carbohydrates or polysaccharides like inulin, pectins, different gums, lignins, and phytonutrients. And what is just an interesting scientific side note, but if you look at that big molecule on the left side of the screen, you can see there's basically a bunch of circles or hexagons there. Those are basically the sugars. And then all of the lines that are connecting those sugars are the different chemical bonds. And chemical bonds are usually either coming out of the screen towards you or back behind the screen and away from you. So you have to think about these in 3-dimensional space. So depending on how those chemical bonds are orientated, our own enzymes aren't able to cut and cleave those bonds to release those sugars, whereas the enzymes inside of the microbiome or these different bacteria that live in our gut actually have the ability to cleave those bonds to liberate the sugar either for their own metabolism and energy usage or liberating some of these healthy compounds off of these massive molecules. So pretty cool, and why the probiotics metabolizing prebiotics are so healthy for us. So then we have probiotic. Probiotic is the actual microorganism, and usually we're talking about bacteria. Bacteria of the microbiome are by far the most well-researched organism. So a lot of, especially the supplementation that we'll get will be as bacteria. But these bacteria are known and have been shown to elicit positive health benefits, mostly because of how they're metabolizing that food. And here on the screen are just some examples with lactobacillus and the different bifidobacteria being the most common and popular in probiotic supplements. And then we have this thing called postbiotics. Postbiotics is neither the food for the bacteria or the actual living organism. Postbiotics are this accumulation of all of the different compounds that have been made as the result of the metabolic activity of these microorganisms or bacteria. And you might be thinking, well, what in the world are you talking about? But I guarantee everybody on this call knows what postbiotics are. And would you like to see the most common example of what postbiotics look like? So how about just beer and wine, right? If you think about what's going on here, we have a postbiotic blend. We took sugar water, whether that sugar water came from grain or it came from grapes, and then we add yeast into that sugar water. Those yeast start metabolizing that sugar water, and specifically the sugar. And as a result of their metabolism, they release alcohol or ethanol into the liquid, right? So we're consuming that ethanol as a postbiotic from the fermentation process. So we can do similar things with these healthy microorganisms that live on and in us. So we can grow up bacteria in different medium, maybe under different circumstances, and we can force their metabolism to go certain ways so that they will make specific healthy compounds for us. And then we'll take whatever it is they were living in, maybe dry it down and put it back into a nutritional supplement. So now instead of delivering the healthy actual microorganisms, we're delivering the things we want them to be making to elicit those health benefits. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that's a little bit more about the microbiome, some of the terminology, where it's living, why it's so important for us, but what can you do to support it? You know, it is very clearly been shown that exercise and a healthy diet are two of the best things you can do for your microbiome. But if we come back to wanting to manage our microbiomes more as an ecosystem and kind of keep farming it in a healthy way, if you will, then I think we also need to be thinking about supplementing with a couple of things. And those would be a good prebiotic fiber supplement as well as a good probiotic supplement. So let's talk about each one of these, and we'll start with the prebiotics, right? Or the food for the healthy bacteria. And so I'm going to come back to that. But if we actually look at the label, you will see that, yeah, there's a lot of carbohydrates in there, because remember that fibers are also carbohydrates. And a lot of these foods that the bacteria can consume are also going to be carbohydrates. And what I love about our prebiotic fiber are two things. One, it's not just a bulking fiber agent, right? That's only meant for you to go more regularly to the bathroom. While we do have some of those fibers in there, what I like about the fibers that we have in our prebiotic is that they are specifically the foods that have been shown to be the healthiest, that when consumed by these bacteria in our gut will result in those healthy metabolites that we want made. So especially that fructooligosaccharide or that zolo-oligosaccharide, or we just say XOS for short. So a lot of great prebiotic fibers in our prebiotic. But something else that we don't talk a whole lot about are the amino acids that are also in the prebiotic. Why are those amino acids so important? It turns out that the cells of especially our small intestine derive the majority of their energy from metabolizing amino acids. So we put some amino acids in there to help support that metabolic activity of the cells that actually line our gut. And so by supplementing with a good high quality prebiotic fiber, you can support that healthy, balanced gut microbiome. You can further help promote a healthy environment for those healthy bacteria or probiotics to grow. And this will also allow for that healthy balance of those beneficial bacteria to thrive and survive. And if you think about it, it really is an arms race when it comes to our gut. Because if you think about it, we're a tube that's open to the air and the environment around us. So just about everything that our skin is exposed to, our gut is also going to be exposed to. So as we're just even breathing air or we're eating food, we're also consuming unhealthy bacteria. And so if we can constantly encourage these healthy bacteria to grow, thrive, and survive, they can outcompete a lot of those unhealthy organisms that are also trying to get in. I think about it a lot like parking spots at a supermarket, right? If every spot's taken up in the parking lot, it's going to be really hard to pull your car in. So we want to keep as many healthy bacteria in the gut as possible. And now how about our probiotics? So now we're talking about the actual healthy bacteria that make up our gut microbiome. So our probio, it's important to note, is delivering clinical doses of each of the strains of bacteria that's in there. So for us, as a total dose, that serves for 6 billion CFUs, which stands for colony forming units. It's just the scientific way that they count bacteria. So a good, healthy, robust dose of these beneficial bacteria. And by choosing bacteria that we know through the scientific research are delivering health properties, we can further help you seed those healthy gut bacteria. So more than just having the healthy bacteria there, healthy microbiome, gut microbiome has been shown to help the lining of the gut. So keeping that integrity nice and tight, making it hard for anything to be able to just kind of sneak through. And then you guys have probably heard the statistic somewhere, but somewhere between 70 to 80% of our immune system, right? The cells that make up our immune system actually live inside of our gut. So there's a direct interaction between our immune system and this gut microbiome. Now, I think most people on this call should know this, but last June or July, we upgraded our ProBio supplement. We upgraded it for a number of reasons, right? And I think that first slide illustrates the main reason why we upgraded ProBio, and that is there's no field in nutrition that's moving more quickly. So we wanted our product to stay at the forefront of that nutritional research. So we decided to change up the strains of bacteria that are in the ProBio, so better research strains. We also put a better balance of the 6 bacteria that make up our ProBio, and we packaged it in what we believe to be a far better delivery system. So let's talk about these. So what did we do? We left a lot. Well, let's talk about how we actually kind of classify different bacteria. So I don't know if you remember from your biology classes, but did you have to memorize that kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, right? You probably came up with some clever acronym, King, Philip, flu, whatever it is. But as we talk about genus and species, right, we have, in this case, at the very top, Lactobacillus acidophilus, so genus and species. Now, when we start talking about these bacteria of the microbiome, they go just a little bit further, and they actually have a strain classification. So one of these, this genus and species, might make a specific set of metabolites that we want. And so we can further characterize these bacteria based on those metabolites that they're making, right? That molecular biology. So we can choose the genus and the species, but more importantly, the specific strain of these healthy bacteria that we want, that we know are going to make those healthy metabolites to yield those health benefits. And so while we've left a lot of the genus and species the same, we have chosen different strains to really supercharge now our ProBio supplement. A better balance. So we were pretty heavy in the previous formula on one specific strain, but now you can see we've really balanced out those 6 billion CFUs across the 6 different strains that are in ProBio. I mentioned that we believe it's in a much better delivery system than previously. And if anybody had the pleasure of taking ProBio previously when it was in those spheres, those chalky, uncoated, choke you to death kind of spheres, we were able to find a new technology in a capsule that delivered 25% better delivery of those healthy bacteria to the gut than that previous BioTrack technology. So it's easier to swallow because it's now in a coated capsule. It's only one per day. And we were also able now with this new formula to get ProBio into every market around the world for LifeVantage. So a single unified formula in a delivery system that delivers even better deliverability of those healthy bacteria to where they need to be in that lower GI tract. And then lastly, just for your information, nothing has really changed when it comes to delivering the yeast extract that was in there previously. We did just change up the label a little bit to better represent the specific compounds that we were delivering through this yeast extract. And this also is a great way to differentiate our ProBio from others on the market, because these compounds, these beta glucans as they're known, actually have amazing immune health benefits. So a healthy microbiome in itself is great for a healthy immune system, but also adding these beta glucans on top of that provides even further immune support benefits. And it's really cool because we also have now an activation story with our ProBio. So those beta glucans, we'll talk about in just a second, are working on a nutrigenomic angle to actually strengthen our immune systems. So what else has been shown with these beta glucans from yeast? They've been clinically shown to support your immune system. So again, further enhancing that immune support. And so it's going to support your energy and your health all year long without overstimulating it. So let's quickly just, last thing we'll touch on is this nutrigenomic angle with these different beta glucans. So here is a little cartoon image of what a yeast cell wall looks like. So yeast are unique in that their cell wall consists of both a plasma membrane, like our cells do, but also like plants, they actually have a pretty thick cell wall, and that's where they get their structure. It turns out that cell wall is made up of a number of those really complex carbohydrates called beta glucans. And again, just for your information, you don't have to take this away from you, but that you see the beta 1,3 glucan or the beta 1,6 glucan, that's the specific type of chemical bond that's going to be between those sugars that the enzymes of the microbiome can actually cleave and release those smaller beta glucans. But these beta glucans work in a really cool way. They get into our digestive system, they get absorbed, make it into circulation, and they get metabolized by a certain population of immune cells. Those immune cells release those beta glucan metabolites, they go back out into circulation, and they then bind to receptors on the outsides of especially what they call macrophages, or our first line of defense when it comes to our immune system. This is important because it really takes two touches, if you will, of an immune system to become fully activated in its heightened state so that it can go on and do its job. And so why they call this beta glucan action priming is because this priming mechanism of these beta glucans are acting as that first contact. So it's bringing those immune cells to that heightened state so they can more quickly and more readily be able to do their job. And just to put it more simply, it's almost like there's two locks on the outside of our immune cells. And so this priming mechanism is like removing one of those locks so that you can more quickly unlock that lock and unlock the potential of that immune cell. So with that, Fry, that is everything about your microbiome, and then how our prebiotic and probiotics can help support that ecology of our gut microbiome.
Man, that is so much science where, you know, at times you think like, okay, there's science. We all get that we're part of LifeVantage. We're a scientifically driven company. But man, it's super, super cool to really dissect each one of these products and why and how, and some of the decisions that have been made on as far as your product development and your staff and so forth, to really bring us a product that is, you know, above what is normally out there. And there's a lot of questions out there with pre and post and pro. I mean, that was a great explanation for me to just, you know, just understand even in its layman's terms, but then to really understand and see the different strands and why and how. And one of the things that was brought up to me, because it was interesting, we have a lot of kids, you know, I know a lot of people have a lot of kids, and they are trying to make sure that, hey, you know, we're trying to get our kids as healthy as possible. And I remember hearing one of our particular distributors said that they took that, you know, the little ball, right? And they would chuck it into a blender and mix that up, and we drink that. And I remember hearing that is not something that we should do, correct?
Yeah, well, you're going to lose a little bit of that survivability for sure, whether it comes from that little round sphere or the capsule itself. So yeah, it's not going to be as effective as if you swallowed it whole, but you are still going to be getting some bacteria from it.
Okay, beautiful. And then the other question was this, Brian: why are some refrigerated and some aren't? You know, what is the reason for that? I mean, is it something that we've done in our formula that allows us not to refrigerate, where others don't have that to where they are refrigerating? And how much is lost in both of those?
Yeah, that's a great question. And something that definitely differentiates our ProBio is that it does not need to be refrigerated. And so the reason that a lot of probiotics need to be refrigerated is because there's the actual bacteria that's in there, right? So they're trying to keep that bacteria alive. But working with our strategic vendors, we've been able to come up with a way to stabilize that bacteria at room temperature when it's dried out, where when we give it back to people, those bacteria are going to be alive and deliver those 6 billion healthy bacteria to the lower digestive system. So it just really comes down to the formulation of the products, choosing the right strains, having great partners that we can work with to come up with the right, you know, stabilizers, if you will. And something else that also sets our probiotic apart is there are other non-refrigerated probiotics on the market, but many of those also have to use dairy as that stabilizer. We were able to come up with a stabilizing system that's also dairy free. And so we don't have that concern if somebody might have concerns around lactose or other proteins with dairy.
Man, that's crazy. Because I mean, it to me, what's really interesting is people have a notion that it's only a viable probiotic if it's refrigerated. It's like, oh, you don't refrigerate your product, it can't be a good probiotic, which is such a mental, you know, mistake for a lot of people out in the world. But what it does is it gives us a lot of information to be able to go and combat against that with regards to the people that we're talking to. And then I didn't know that about the milk side of things as far as being a stabilizer in a lot of those live probiotics.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. We got one question that I think is very interesting, and this came in from Shannon. And she says, if microbiome bacteria are off, as in someone with SIBO, SIBO, or otherwise just a digestive issue, do not get to take advantage of the nutrients in food as much as people without digestive issues. Like, why is that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's going to be the reason for a number of different reasons. A healthy microbiome is so important to help the cells of the gut be as healthy as possible. And a major reason for that is if you think about it, the gut takes a beating. You know, it's like our skin, but especially when we're talking about our lower digestive system, I mean, it's just exposed to literally all of the waste that our bodies don't want. So it's just sitting there stewing in this waste. our cells of our gut are some of the fastest cells to turn over in our bodies, and they turn over about every 3 to 5 days because of the dangerous jobs that they have. I tell you all of that to say that some of the compounds that are produced by some of these healthy probiotics actually force the cells of our intestine to turn over more quickly, which is a good thing because it's minimizing the time that they're exposed to all of the nasty stuff that they can be exposed to. So that's one reason that those metabolites from that healthy microbiome are going to help the cells of the intestine turn over more quickly and be more healthy. And then the second part of that is going to be the microbiome can help us metabolize a whole bunch of different nutrients. We talked about them making B vitamins, vitamin K, lipoic acid, and some others. But they're also going to help us start to break down some of those fibers that are in our food. A lot of minerals tend to be bound up pretty tightly in the fiber of that plant material. So by them starting to chew at the fiber, it can liberate different nutrients from our diet as well. So a lot of reasons why a healthy microbiome is good for nutrient absorption.
That is so cool, man. I never thought I'd get excited about pro and prebiotic. But another great question, and it's interesting because I think as a kid we've always been brought up like, eat your yogurt, and take these different. I forget the little drink one that's pretty tasty for kids. But what would be the percentage of delivery between like a food probio, like a yogurt drink versus our product? Do you happen to know that off the top of your head?
Yeah, the numbers are going to vary significantly, between brands, between the type of yogurt, Greek or normal, whatever it might be. But generally speaking, in like yogurt, for example, there's only, at most going to be a few million bacteria there versus kind of the billions of numbers that we're shooting for. So yes, you're going to be getting probiotics, different probiotics from fermented foods, whatever they are. And by all means, we should encourage people to eat fermented foods. They're incredibly healthy, but they're just not delivering the efficacious doses that have been shown in the scientific literature. And the other huge variable, like we were talking about, why you need to refrigerate your probiotic potentially. The same thing is going to apply to food as well. So if it's not handled well, those bacteria are going to decline over time. So if your yogurt, for example, doesn't stay refrigerated and handled properly, those numbers of probiotics are going to continue to decline.
Okay, very interesting. So basically in the millions as opposed to the billions, and obviously we can do the math as far as how that would be efficacious for us in the body. I think this was a pretty interesting question. It's from Daryl. He says, do the pre or probiotics work or have health benefits for someone who has had their stomach removed?
I would say absolutely, because there are very little, if any, bacteria that are actually living in the stomach. So there's also very few bacteria that are living in our small intestine. It's not until we get to the large intestine, especially down into the colon, that's where we're going to find the majority of our microbiome. And so I would say, just speaking off the cuff, not knowing a ton about this situation, but not having the stomach, they would still be getting benefits by supplementing with pre and probiotics.
So with that picture that you showed earlier, as it moves through the stomach, though, that's where that benefit would actually take place all the way down to the colon.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's interesting because it leads me to my next question. A lot of people have commented or said something, and maybe they're not heavy or this is like a first time probiotic user, but why is it that most people, start to get a little gassy on probiotics?
Well, that the gas is actually a good thing. I mean, maybe not for your neighbor or your spouse, but the gas is proof that food is being metabolized. So you are now actually putting bacteria in there, and you are feeling that they're actually working and eating that food. And it's my experience that discomfort tends to go away in just like even a week or two, right? As your body adapts to the new microbiome and those healthy bacteria that are there. So it's my experience that gassy phase, you know, it's very short term. It comes and goes, but it is that adaptive period of time when your microbiome and your diet are starting to collide and meet each other pretty intimately.
Right on. All right. Well, hey, you've given me an explanation now to my fiance where I get to just say, hey, my ProBio is working and I'm healthy and life is good, honey. Like, just chill out. So, hey, one quick last question. Are there different foods that work better with pre and probiotics that we should be focused on? Or does it matter?
You've probably heard me say this when it comes to like omega-3 fatty acids, but you know, literally the more omega-3 fatty acids you eat, the better. There is almost no upper limit there. And I would put fiber in that same camp. I mean, you literally cannot eat too much fiber. And the literature is very clear. It shows us the more fiber that we're eating in our diet every single day, the better health outcomes we have. So my response would be just keep eating as many fruits and especially vegetables as possible. Get those fibers, get the different types of fibers in there to further help promote those healthy probiotics.
That's incredible. Well, Dr. Dixon, it's been a pleasure. It's been 45 minutes already. I know a lot of people have blown up the chat just saying how incredible this call has been. So informative, so much information. And also the visual. You know, we really appreciate not only the explanation, but the visual slides that you use in a really, you know, I guess, I don't want to say the word dumbed down, but just for me to understand. I'm a very visual driven person. And so those things really, truly help. And so, guys, we're super thankful for Brian Dixon. I know if everyone could unmute themselves, they would say, you know, the same things that I'm saying. And guys, we have a responsibility. This message is so important. These products are way too important. They are changing people's lives. They're bringing, you know, a lot of different aspects to each individual very differently. But this is what I can say. It's adding value and it's tremendous benefit to their life somehow, some way. And we have a big job at our hands. We have a big stewardship as well, to where the intellectual, you know, we think about always being in network marketing, specifically LifeVantage, that we always think about, you know, we distribute health products. Yes, we do that. But I also want everyone to understand we do more intellectual distribution with the world than we do just selling products. And so this is that call that gives us that belief level, Brian, and I just can't thank you enough, man. So we'll look forward to next week. Do you want to, I know we have EA coming up for next week. Are you planning on rolling out early next week, or can we plan on noon Wednesday next week?
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up. I am on a plane Wednesday morning.
Okay. So I will get together with Dr. Dixon and we will have that time either figured out to where we get this back out, but we will do this, even if it's a recorded call for next week. I know a lot of people will be traveling. And guys, check the Vision Summit YouTube channel. That is where we post this every single week. You know, Greg has done a fantastic job in giving that back out to the world. And what's really cool, Dr. Dixon, is if you look at the numbers, those videos are being viewed. You know, obviously noon is not an opportune time depending on where you are geographically, but we are getting a ton of people to that channel, watching this, linking it, sharing it with their people. And so this call is needed, it's deserved, and it's valuable. So we appreciate it. Guys, keep changing the world. Keep